On the road between the Lower Semine Mill and Rock Tower Pond, we have another murder mystery that we need to solve. You can see that this is approximately halfway between the two locations. It's going to be right after this little wooden bridge that is right behind us here. And to find this spot, we are going to go up into the rocks, and here we are going to find the remains of our victim.
Poor woman. All beat up. What brute could do that to her?
As Henry says, it's apparent that this crime was committed with a great deal of violence and brutality given all of the blood on the ground here. What we can also see is that this was not a robbery gone bad. The victim is left with all of the items in her inventory as well as all of her groschen, which means that she was not being robbed. Whoever came here to kill her. And we could also see when we look around her campsite that she had nothing of value for people to take, and in fact, her hut built against the rock here gives us an eerie reminiscent of Bojena's with these wicker baskets and not much else. What we do have here is a basket with some potions in it, and these potions are actually quite good. The interesting part is we can pick these potions up instead of stealing them, which implies that perhaps these were meant for Henry all along. And that makes me wonder, because if this woman is some sort of a witch maybe, did she foresee Henry's coming and prepare these potions intending to try to aid him? And I kind of like to think that that might be the case because of this Henry's Savior Schnapps. And this is something that only a high-level alchemist can make, but it also has Henry's name on it, which is interesting because there's very few other of these in the game. But with that said, we're going to go out and try to figure out who murdered this poor, innocent young woman. Our investigation takes us first to Troskowitz, where we stop in to speak with the innkeeper, since innkeepers are always privy to the latest gossip. This pays off pretty quickly as the innkeeper is able to inform us that the victim we found was a Divoshenka. A Divoshenka is basically a sort of witch that lives in the woods and makes potions and magical salves, as well as being a practitioner of witchcraft. The innkeeper informs us that this Divoshenka appeared to be benevolent, often aiding the people of Semine. However, she also says that there were recent accusations that the Divoshenka had enchanted a married man, and it's here that we receive our first lead regarding suspects in this murder. The innkeeper informs us that the people of Semine were afraid that the Divoshenka would place a spell on young Olda before his wedding, and so they, quote, dealt with her. In addition, we find out that there is some superstition and bias against Divoshenka, painting them as being these misshapen, deformed creatures. Listen to the innkeeper's own words here.
You shouldn't go there.
Why not?
The Semine lot did that. They were worried she might put young Lord Semine under a spell, especially now, because of the wedding. So they took care of her. And that's about it, I'd say.
With that information, we leave Troskowitz to pursue our leads in Semine. As we ride, we consider the facts of this case thus far. The victim was a young woman who had been branded as a Divoshenka, or Witch of the Woods. She appeared to have been a kind and helpful woman attempting to heal the locals. And as we think about this, we might even recall the Henry Savior Schnapps she left for us. Knowing that she was a witch makes this even more interesting because it now seems almost certain that she foresaw Henry coming. Without knowing him, she went out of her way to use all of her skills and her best ingredients to craft a basket of potions to try and assist him on his quest. Once again, remember that we could pick up these potions as if we already owned them, and the Savior Schnapps was a Henry's quality item, which is a pretty rare to find in the game. And it seems like a way to let us know that she intended that basket of potions for him. We might also remember that she was not at all misshapen or deformed, but rather appeared to be a normal woman. This makes the potential for a bias-fueled killing even more disturbing. It is entirely possible that this young woman was murdered out of cold-blooded superstition and bias and was guilty of nothing more than being different. If anything, this increases our determination to solve her murder and bring the perpetrators to justice. Firmly focused on these goals, we head to Semine to begin our investigation. When we get to Semine, we decide to start with the leading members of the community, those being Lord Semine and Captain Gnarly. However, Lord Semine refuses to even discuss or consider discussing the issue of the slain Devoshenka with us, and so does Captain Gnarly. Neither one of these leaders are willing to even mention this crime, which is very suspicious because you would think that the Lord and his chief military officer would be very concerned about a murder that occurred within their territory, and yet they refuse to discuss this with us. In fact, even the catchpole in Lower Semine is not at all concerned, and as we walk around talking to common people, they either refuse to speak with us, or they just want to talk about everyday things and refuse to mention the murder. This is very interesting to me because it feels like the entire community, from the Lord all the way down to the common folk, are all working together to cover up this crime. However, I also decide that we should check the woodcutter camp because the woodcutters do have some history with some vigilante-type justice. So we head out that way, and we go and try to talk to the foreman about the murder. However, the foreman refuses to discuss this with us and really has nothing to say, and none of the other woodcutters here are willing to talk to us either. So it appears that there is a large-scale cover-up going on, because we know that enough people knew about this murder for the innkeeper in Troskowitz to have heard about it, and yet when we come around trying to investigate, not a single person is willing to speak with us. With all of our leads turning into dead ends, we return to the crime scene one last time. It's hard not to feel a sense of defeat here as we realize that we will probably never find justice for this young woman who was likely murdered in cold blood for the sole crime of being different. No matter where we've looked, there just aren't any leads as to who exactly is responsible, nor are there any leads as to whether or not Lord Semine or the officers of his household, such as Captain Gnarly, were involved in the murder or perhaps even ordered it. With that said, this does lend a different light to accompanying Burgrave Hashik to Semine. Some of the Burgrave's words ring true to us, especially since we have experienced the code of omerta that pervades Semine's lands firsthand.
Their silence is just as good for me as an admission of guilt. I'm going to burn down this nest of vipers. And if anyone tries to stop me, I'll make no distinction between you and them.
So we can go with Burgrave Hashik to gain some sort of justice for this murdered woman, although Hashik's version of justice is a little bit extreme. I don't think that the kind Devoshenka would have wanted us to murder an entire castle. Regardless, there are two questions that are never really answered. The first is, did this witch foresee Henry coming and being in need of assistance? Did she go out of her way to craft her best potions and leave them for him? And I think so, given the presence of Henry's savior schnapps and the fact that the other wise woman, Bojena, risks a great deal to help Henry. This would sort of be a theme. The second is whether or not Lord Semine knew about this murder or was even complicit in it. The way the innkeeper seems to know about this suggests that the murder was carried out in part from concern for Lord Semine's son being targeted by witchcraft. If the story of the murder is told all the way in Troskowitz town, it's hard to believe that Lord Semine wasn't aware. We also know that Semine is perfectly willing to look the other way when it comes to Olda's crimes as well. Overall, I find it likely that Semine knew. But what do you guys think? Did the Devoshenka foresee Henry's coming and prepare a welcoming basket for him? Was Semine complicit in her murder? If so, does this change how you feel about Lord Semine and his people? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoy this type of content, hit the like, subscribe, and notification button so that you don't miss our future videos. I'm currently working on The Ballad of Henry and Clara, a story of love, loss, and revenge, and hope to post it next week. It should have some really good combat sequences, as well as splicing together some of the cutscenes from the game. I think you guys will really enjoy it. As always, take care until next time.